for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report, mostly cloudy today, a shower and thunderstorm, breezy and humid, a high of 78, a thunderstorm tonight, low of 69. A thunderstorm in parts of the area tomorrow, a high of 80, and a low of 71. For Friday, a shower and thunderstorm, a high of 80, low of 62. Saturday, breezy in the afternoon, high of 75, low of 63. Sunday, clouds, afternoon showers, high of 76, low of 57. Monday, mostly cloudy, high of 69, low of 55. Tuesday, considerable clouds, high of 67, low of 57. The pollen count remains high. Sunrise today was at 5:37 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:54 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story, Pro Soccer Group Investing in Future. Peter Marlett understands the skepticism over his twice-delayed plan to bring a pro soccer team to Buffalo. But he says that effort is still on track, even if he plans to start playing having been pushed back 2 years. And he's asking for patience. At the end of the day, people are going to have to trust that we wouldn't be spending all this money if this wasn't moving forward, Marlett, president of Buffalo's Pro Soccer, said Tuesday ahead of a town hall with soccer fans who have put a deposit on seats to become the team's founding members. Marlett says he has an ownership group, some employees, and plenty of investors in place for the professional soccer club he plans to bring to Buffalo. His main priority now is to finalize the stadium location for the United Soccer League Championship Club so that at some point it can start playing matches after his original site didn't work out. We just need a little continued patience, he added. I think if people want to be skeptical, they're going to go ahead and do that. But if you look at what we're doing, the hires we're making and the community education we're doing, I'd hope that indicates that we're not just burning cash here. We're doing everything for a reason. But after delaying the start of the team twice, Marlett also finds himself having to quell the perception by some that this project may never happen. A few years since its inception, Buffalo Pro Soccer has established a presence in Buffalo through youth programming and has built a team of ambassadors spreading the word about pro soccer coming to the area. The group is working with Silo City, the state, Independent Health, and the U.S. Soccer Foundation to put on soccer programs and clinics this summer, helping bring the sport to underserved communities. Marlett also has hired a director of youth soccer, coaches, and a team of young professionals to build momentum for Buffalo Pro Soccer, which is hosting clinics around the World Cup, which will start later this week. Buffalo is hosting watch parties and other events for the World Cup, where Marlett plans to have a presence with many of those employees. But Buffalo Pro Soccer has also missed 2 self-imposed deadlines on bringing a USFL team to the area, raising questions about if and when the team will become a reality. This time, Marlett isn't setting a date for the team to come to Buffalo after that's backfired twice. I and the league and the investors have an expectation of when we're going to start, but there's no point in putting an arbitrary deadline on it, he said. I don't think this is going to take very long, but at the same time, why add pressure when it's not necessary? Big decisions still lie ahead for the group before it can claim significant progress has been made. In a letter to its early season ticket holders, Marlett told fans the USL's expansion club it hopes to bring to Buffalo won't start play in 2027. Buffalo Pro Soccer has delayed plans for the team by a year after the first stadium site chosen in the city's Valley neighborhood fell through last summer after opposition from a chemical manufacturing plant next door drew attention to earlier complaints about fumes and odors there. The latest decision to delay play was made along with the league, team investors, and other key parties. They all believed it was best for the long-term sustainability of the team, Marlett said. Still a lot to do. An agreement still has not been reached for a stadium location with multiple sites, including a downtown location between KeyBank Center and Salem Field, still on the table. Marlette has said the stadium would be built with prefabricated modular pieces, which would literally take around 8 months to complete, but there will likely be municipal approvals needed that, depending on the site chosen, could take months. A representative from the USL was in town last month looking at potential stadium locations, and league representatives were happy with the progress, Marlette said. Buffalo Pro Soccer could have already formed the expansion team and played at another site while the stadium was being worked out, but Marlette has repeatedly said he would prefer not to start in a temporary location. It's about prioritizing from day one that we're in the right setup, Marlette said. We could have been playing 2 years ago if we were willing to be tenants in someone else's stadium. That would have been easy. We didn't want to rush it and roll the dice and then hope in the future that we could make the pieces fall into place. Marlette also has never identified the members of the ownership group backing his plans. An announcement on the ownership group is now in place is likely the next step, but Marlette would not comment to when that could happen. I'm thrilled with the ownership, and so is the league, he said. It's the best situation we have been in so far in our 2 years of existence. Marlette said the group has raised a lot of funding and had a lot of success in the raise over the past few months. As the stadium announcement gets closer, he would not say how much has been raised. But Marlette did say that there are ample funds available to build a stadium, which will likely cost between $10 million and $40 million, depending on the location. We're in a phenomenal financial position right now, Marlette said. While there are multiple stadium locations still on the table, 1 or 2 of them are at the top of the list, Marlette said. The only known site under consideration is a downtown location on the parking lots of the former Buffalo News Building and HSBC atrium between KeyBank Center and Salem Field and next to Lecom Harbor Center. That site, which would create more of a stadium district downtown, has probably been the most intriguing for city planners and officials. It is also around public transit and plenty of parking, as well as restaurant and entertainment options. It was originally the top choice of Marlette, but the stadium would have cost $40 million to build and initially operate. That meant the group initially needed state funds to pay for about half of it. Buffalo Pro Soccer made an aggressive push but could not secure the state funding it needed. Marlette has said with additional investors now in the fold, public funds may not be needed to make that idea a reality. He has also been looking at another unidentified Buffalo location that was on the team's short list in the first time around and considering a few other locations in the city. He has never identified those sites. It has now been nearly a year since the announcement in July that Buffalo Pro Soccer would be scrapping its first choice to play in the new $10 million stadium on the former Medaille University Athletic Complex, located on Elk Street next to the chemical plant. There are still multiple locations on that list, but they have definitely been prioritized, Marlette said. We've got to continue those conversations, and I expect us to be able to say a lot more and have a site announced in the not-so-distant future. We just have to get it across the finish line.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Larry. Zellner Rivera square off in contest for Senate seat. The 61st State Senate District encompasses much of Erie County, and interest in the race for this Senate seat extends far beyond the boundaries of the voting map. That's because Erie County Democratic Party Chairman Jeremy Zellner, who also served as Democratic Commissioner for the Board of Elections, won the special election for that seat in February despite huge sums of money spent on behalf of his Republican challenger to malign Zellner as a power-hungry party boss, insider, and political machine operator. Zellner defeated Republican Dan Gagliardo with 60% of the vote in an overwhelmingly Democratic district. But what happens when both candidates are Democrats? Zellner has advantages over challenging Assemblyman Jonathan Rivera in the upcoming Democratic primary. Zellner has received many endorsements, maintains a 3-to-1 funding advantage, and has an aggressive mailing and TV ad campaign. He can also use his relationships with leaders throughout the county, whom Zellner helped elect to office, as well as his achievements as senator in the 4 months that Zellner has been serving. I was encouraged to do this by the people that live here, the people that live in the district, Zellner said. The elected officials, the block club leaders, the business owners, people who know me and know that I'm a tenacious fighter. Rivera wasn't getting outworked, however. He's drawing on support from organized labor, waging a door-to-door campaign and pushing a message similar to Gagliardo's that voters shouldn't reward a political kingmaker just because they want the job. He also promotes his own record of accomplishments as a member of the Assembly. His 149th district includes west side of Buffalo and stretches south to Hamburg. The process by which Jeremy nominated himself without much of a public sort of transparent process really doesn't fit well with people in an era where people are kind of making their position known at No Kings rallies, he said. The 61st State Senate includes parts of the city of Buffalo, the city and town of Tonawanda, the towns of Amherst and Grand Island, and the villages of Kenmore and Williamsville. Both men said they support laws to promote affordability and lower-cost housing, a moratorium on data center development, and both have said they oppose allowing local police to aid U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Both talk about supporting bills that lower utility costs, supporting funding for education, and protecting Medicaid benefits. Rivera, 39, is a lifelong Buffalo resident and a Latino with a bachelor's degree in business administration from Buffalo State University and a master's degree in political management from George Washington University. He worked in banking before joining County Executive Mark Poloncarz' administration as a liaison to the county legislature and as an assistant to the Public Works Commissioner. He joined the Assembly in 2021. Zellner, 48, is a lifelong resident of the city of Tonawanda with a political science degree from Buffalo State. He served as Democratic Chief of Staff for the Erie County Legislature before becoming chairman of the Erie County Democratic Committee in 2012. He also served as a Board of Elections Commissioner from 2017 to 2026, when he stepped down to run for the Senate seat previously occupied by Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan. When asked what distinguishes Zellner from Rivera, Zellner said, "I think it's my accomplishments, what I've gotten done in a short time I'm here, but also what I've done as somebody who's elected folks, brought our party together, a historically dysfunctional party that's full of disunity. We are now more united than we've ever been." Rivera, meanwhile, points to his work in the Assembly. Jeremy Zellner has spent all these years in his role as the chairman of the party, never really learning the values of working class people, he said. "The reason I have so much support in organized labor is because I have a track record that I can hang my hat on." Campaign contrasts. When it comes to outreach, Zellner has the clear advantage in reaching voters in his district, with nearly daily campaign mailers sent to district residents over the past week alone, paid for by the New York State Democratic Committee, the Erie County Democratic Committee, his own direct campaign funds, and from his Senate office. He also has TV ads running regularly. Comparatively, many district voters during the same period saw only a single slate mailer from the AFL-CIO endorsing both Rivera and incumbent state comptroller Thomas DiNapoli. Zellner raised about $650,000 since his special election in February against Gagliardo, according to his campaign, and benefits from the support of the broader party system. Rivera's campaign says he raised $230,000 and is relying more heavily on volunteer legwork. Rivera has the edge when it comes to union support. While both candidates have union endorsements, Rivera's list is more extensive, including public employees unions and the AFL-CIO, the largest labor federation in the state. He also carries the Working Families Party endorsement. Zeller, meanwhile, has touted the endorsements of dozens of elected leaders whom Zellner has supported over the years. That includes endorsements from Governor Kathy Hochul and Poloncarz. "I'm very proud of the work I've done as the leader of this party to elect good Democrats who are getting good policy done," he said. Rivera said, "I'd rather have the support of public sector workers, social workers, snowplow drivers, and nurses over the endorsement of politicians." And questions of character. Zellner has been the target of negative messaging by Rivera, who has been keen to exploit the perception that Zellner's focus on politics and power, not on people. Rivera has called out Zellner for transferring money from the Erie County Democratic Committee's Chairman's Circle fund, meant to support party leadership and operations, and using it to support his own political campaign. Zellner said that money was transferred only for his special election race against a Republican candidate. Rivera also contends Zellner has orchestrated his own election as county's party leader and manipulated the political system to gain appointment to his last three political positions. He denounced Zellner's pattern of appointing hand-picked Democrats to fill open vacancies instead of allowing voters to decide, and denigrated Zellner's search for a candidate to succeed Ryan in the state Senate when Zellner was the candidate who emerged from the search. Jeremy's search for the Senate ended when he looked in the mirror, Rivera said. Zellner responded that Rivera had no history as a good government reformer until he ran for this Senate seat, noting that his father is a longtime Buffalo Common Council member David Rivera. He is the son of a majority leader of a council member, Zellner said. So to act like he is an outsider who has not been part of this establishment and not part of our organization is for more than 20 years is crazy. Rivera has pitched himself as a staunch progressive who has promoted a strong left-wing agenda and been rewarded by voters' trust. He labeled Zellner as middle-of-the-road campaigner who picks up popular positions as sound bites but lacks conviction, pointing out that Zellner's Democratic Committee has accepted $50,000 in campaign money from polarizing and controversial Republican developer Carl Palladino and his business interests from 2013 to 2015. That led Zellner to fight back with his own negative messaging recently about Rivera's father also accepting Palladino's money. His most recent mailer tied Rivera to Palladino, saying, "Reject Carl Palladino, reject John Rivera." Zellner said Rivera helped manage his father's campaign. Rivera said he was in college when his father, a Buffalo police officer, was first campaigning and said Zellner was grasping at straws. Zellner said, "My opponent's campaign is built on a cornerstone of misleading the voters. If you really look at the issues, I'm strong as anyone else in the Democratic Party on all our core issues." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump to retaliate after chopper is hit. Washington. President Trump said the United States must respond after he blamed Iran for shooting down an American military helicopter off Oman, posing a new threat to the peace deal he's said for weeks is close. "I have been informed by our great military that last night the Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters while patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz," Trump posted on Tuesday social media. There were two pilots involved. Both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must, of necessity, respond to this attack. There was no immediate indication of what action the U.S. is planning and no response from Iran. U.S. stock prices deepened their slide on the news, and oil prices paired earlier losses. Trump's comments came just hours after his latest claim that an agreement to halt the fighting was close, even as a renewed outbreak of fighting between Israel and Iran raised fears the conflict was escalating again. On Tuesday, the two countries agreed to halt strikes on each other following a flare-up that saw both sides launch waves of ballistic missiles. A ceasefire has been in place for about 2 months, but sporadic fighting among the U.S., Iran, and Israel has continued, underscoring the risk of a return to full-scale war in the absence of a lasting peace deal. Mediation efforts between the U.S. and Iran to strike a deal remain tense, according to people familiar with the matter. Discussions between the mediators led by Pakistan and the two warring sides are ongoing. One of the people said, asking not to be named, discussing private information. Talks between all parties are expected to continue this week, the person said. Trump's diplomatic tack is troubling Israel, which isn't part of the negotiations, and worries that a deal may leave Iran with the means to pose a threat in the future. "We need to ensure that Iran comes out of this confrontation unable to reconstitute its own capabilities as well as those of its proxies," said Orit Strak, a member of Israeli Security Cabinet, referring to groups like Hamas in Gaza and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Interviewed on Israeli's army radio, she voiced hope that Tehran would not secure a windfall in sanctions relief. "We're doing everything possible to ensure that this doesn't happen," she said. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a televised statement Monday that he would hold fire on Iran for now, but would respond should Iran attack again. Earlier, local TV station N12 reported that strikes in South Lebanon, where Israel is fighting Iran-backed Hezbollah militants, would continue at full force. On Tuesday, Israel told residents of Terra in Lebanon to leave the area before a possible operation in the area. A top military commander warned that Israel is ready to strike Iran again. Iran also announced an end to its military operations against Israel, but its Central Military Command warned that if Israel continued to attack, including in southern Lebanon, much harsher and more crushing actions than before will be on the way, the semi-official Fars news agency reported, citing a statement. Oil prices had slipped before Trump's comments amid growing signs that some crude is flowing through the Strait of Hormuz despite the U.S. and Iranian blockades. Kuwait has offered to sell its crude to refiners in Asia for the first time since the war began. The latest indication that oil flows from the Persian Gulf producers are opening up despite Tehran's threat to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:20. Today in history. Wednesday, June 10th. 1898, U.S. Marines landed at Guantanamo Bay, part of a war in Cuba that led to the end of Spanish colonization in the Americas that had begun in the year after the voyage of Christopher Columbus. After the Spanish surrendered, the Treaty of Paris gave the United States sovereignty of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Spain also relinquished Cuba. In 1963, President John Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act, which amended the Fair Labor Standard Act. It aimed to eliminate the pay gap between men and women by prohibiting wage discrimination based on gender. In 1967, Israel signed a ceasefire agreement to end the Six-Day War as the victor. The agreement had been signed by neighboring foes, Jordan and Egypt, 2 days prior, as well as Syria the day before. During the war, Israel had taken the Gaza Strip, West Bank, Golan Heights, and Sinai Peninsula, which led to the exodus of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and Syrians who had lived in those areas. In 1997, about 2 decades after the Cambodian genocide fueled by the totalitarian Khmer Rouge communist government under leader Pol Pot led to the brutal deaths of about 1.7 million people, a fleeing but still powerful Pol Pot ordered the killing of his defense chief, Son Sen, and family. Son Sen and 13 of his family members were murdered 5 days later. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. Time to pause. New York legislators are right to hit the brakes on data center development. Before the debate growth gets any louder, a pause on new data center development in New York State could lower the temperature and set a better deal for residents. Legislation just passed in Albany would enact such a moratorium, though only for a year. The legislative package also includes rules making data centers pay for their own energy infrastructure and any rate increases that would otherwise be passed on to residents. Other requirements include benefits the companies would need to provide to communities and a mandated environmental impact study on data center development in New York and from the state's Department of Environmental Conservation. Finally, data centers that draw 5 megawatts or more would have to use energy from renewable sources on an escalating timeline. These are sensible regulatory steps, and a 1-year pause is a reasonable amount of time for New York to figure out how to permit data centers without hurting communities. Communities have certainly made their voices heard. First, it was the Genesee County residents objecting to the Stream Data Centers project proposed for the county's Stamp Industrial Park, needing as much as 500 megawatts annually and requiring a $1.4 billion subsidy for a gigantic facility that will host only 125 jobs. Multiple public meetings in the small town of Alabama, where Stamp is located, have been packed with people who oppose the project, far outnumbering those who came to speak in favor. Members of the Tonawanda Seneca Nation, which is located adjacent to Stamp and advocates for the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge, also nearby, have been among the most fervent opponents of the project. As Arthur Barnes, a resident of nearby Shelby, rhetorically asked Mark Summer for a New York Times article on the controversy, of all the places to put something like this, did they have to put it right next to a sovereign nation and a national wildlife refuge? It's a reasonable question, and now Tonawanda residents are asking similar questions about a data center proposed for the former Tonawanda Coke site. The project is on hold, but that hasn't quieted opposition, as reported by the News' Stephen Wilson and Mackenzie Schumann. A 2-hour town planning board meeting on June 3rd drew around 250 people, dozens of whom lined up to speak against Riverview Innovation and Technology Campus' proposed 495,000 square foot data center. Speakers are concerned about water, air, and noise pollution, as well as strain on the electrical grid. Water use would be an issue, with the data center needing 8,000 gallons per day of water for its cooling system. Some feel that the toxic legacy of this notorious site makes it even more important that any reuse be for the good of the environment rather than its potential detriment. Chris Morosky, Executive Director of the Clean Air Coalition of Western New York, thinks the Tonawanda Coke site should be developed into a hub for renewable energy. A speaker at the meeting, Cadence Agar, asked, why re-traumatize a community that has suffered so much? Niagara Falls is another site where a data center has been proposed, though it's been proposed by developer Howard Milstein, who over 30 years has done exactly nothing with 142 acres he owns in the city. It's a gold rush period for data centers, with facilities being proposed and built across the U.S. They are essential infrastructure for artificial intelligence and the digital economy. We need digital infrastructure, but do we need to give these billion-dollar companies obscene tax incentives, precious clean water resources, and the ability to strain the power grid as they threaten the surrounding natural environment? Those are the issues that this one-year moratorium should help resolve, as long as Governor Kathy Hochul signs the legislation.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. And if you remember the term blanched, like you blanch vegetables, you stick them into boiling water, and then you quick take them out and you put them in a bowl of ice cubes or cold water to stop the cooking process. Okay, well, here we have Todd Blanche, who is the new Attorney General. And of course, he's wearing a label that said Trump personal attorney, with personal attorney crossed out, and it now says Trump AG. And what he has done, he's in the kitchen, shall we say, and he's got a pair of tongs in one hand, and he has taken a statue of Lady Justice, who's holding a sword in one hand and scales in the other hand, and he has dunked her into the boiling water, and he is ready to put her into a bowl of ice, which is labeled ICE. And the overall title is Todd Blanched, BLANCHED. The second cartoon is by Tom Stiglich of Creator Syndicate. It shows two tickets, like to a circus or something. And they say, come one, come all, the most pathetic show on earth. 2026 Los Angeles mayoral primary featuring clowns, fire performer, TV personalities. And it has a symbol of the Republican and Democrat. And it says June 2nd, 2026 to ... And the ticket stub says, good for one vote, multi-use offer, valid in person or mail-in. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. County must do better on sewers. On the evening of November 14th, 2024, my basement was flooded by a sewage backup. I contacted a plumber, but they were unable to resolve the issue. The following morning, a county crew arrived and dislodged tree roots from the main sewer line, identifying this as the cause of the backup. I was told the issue had been fixed and that the county was not responsible for cleanup or damage inside my home. At first, I assumed my homeowner's insurance would cover the loss. Unfortunately, I later learned my policy excluded the damage. The sewage entered through a capped drain from a bathroom I had removed earlier in the year. Pressure from the blocked sewer line blew the cap off. What is most troubling is that this is not an isolated incident. After speaking with neighbors, I learned that many have experienced similar sewage backups over the years. When I contacted a supervisor with the Division of Sewage Management, I was told that last maintenance on our street occurred 2 years ago. He also stated the county lacks funding for more frequent maintenance. This is unacceptable. When I questioned the county's improvement plans, I was told that sewers in our area are now being cleaned and evaluated for future cured-in-place pipelining projects, and that higher-risk lines may receive preventive flushing. While these long-term plans are welcome, residents should not have to endure repeated sewage flooding while waiting for solutions. The county must prioritize consistent preventive maintenance of our sewer systems. This from Doreen Hirsch of Hamburg.
Thank you, Larry. Hydrogen blending is a terrible idea. Adding hydrogen to natural gas pipes has been touted for years, but it's a bad idea whose time should never come. Hydrogen doesn't play well with gas in existing pipelines. It corrodes pipelines and leaks. Hydrogen is also highly explosive. Who wants an explosion in their community or even in their home? Green hydrogen, supposedly made from clean energy, is often not green at all. And why should we waste vital, clean, renewable energy on creating dangerous hydrogen when we should be using it directly at less cost to consumers? Blending hydrogen and gas pipelines is only potentially good for one party, the gas company that wants to maintain and expand its pipeline structure and stick consumers with the cost. Governor Hochul, please protect us from hydrogen blending. It's contrary to keeping us and our budgets safe. And this is written by Barbara Morrissey of Warsaw. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. ICE actions are indefensible. You cannot consider yourself an informed citizen and condone what this administration is allowing ICE to do in our communities. This is a result of a president whose only vision is vengeance, cruelty, and greed. The Homeland Security funding bill also maintains ICE's annual budget of roughly $10 billion and includes an additional $70 billion. How many more officers, weapons, and detention centers do we need if they are only going after the criminals and the border is closed? Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota cost taxpayers approximately $18 million per week. For what? They are taking children, terrorizing families, and people trying to get home from work. The people that are protesting in their streets are rightly questioning what the hell is happening and why. Free speech is protected by our Constitution and is our right to protest. You cannot consider yourself an informed citizen if you condone the storming of the U.S. Capitol, express rage at the shooting of a podcaster, but agree with what has happened in Minnesota. You cannot consider yourself an informed citizen and condone the blatant assault on the right to free speech and the right to bear arms. These rights are American, not Democratic or Republican. No one is condoning open borders or criminals on the streets. This is right and wrong, ethical versus unethical. This is the rights of American citizens being eroded by the day. We need to stand up and demand the government stop invading communities and demand accurate accountability. This from Chris Bailey of Westfield.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:32. On to some opinion columns. This one is written by John Crisp of Tribune News Service. Is a UFC fight at the White House somehow who we really are? Polls indicate that President Trump is doing a lot that most Americans don't support. The war with Iran, the arbitrary tariffs, the retribution campaign against his perceived enemies, the 250-foot triumphal arch, the $1.776 billion fund intended to reward Trump loyalists. Even Republicans don't like that one. There's so much that it's hard to know what's important. In the middle of the war against Iran, does it really matter if Trump's vanity leads him to appropriate top billing at the J.F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts? Still, it's hard to predict the consequences of acts that seem trivial at the time. Consider the Ultimate Fighting Championship cage fights that Trump is sponsoring on the White House lawn on June 14th as part of America's 250th anniversary celebration. June 14th also happens to be Trump's 80th birthday. It's not clear why any sport needs to be part of the celebration of our country's nativity, but if we're going to stage a sporting event on the White House lawn, why UFC? Trump, of course, is pals with Dana White, the president and CEO of UFC. White, in turn, is an outspoken supporter of Trump and has donated at least $1 million to Trump's campaigns for the presidency. A cynic might say that a valuable UFC gig is just payback for services rendered. In other words, business as usual under Trump. But I suspect there's more to it. A cage match at the White House suits Trump's personal taste in sport, which tend to favor violence and manliness. He's a big fan of boxing, wrestling, and UFC, and he complained bitterly when the NFL modified its kickoff rules in order to reduce injuries. Trump called the new kickoffs sissy football. Well, there's nothing sissy about UFC. Boxing may be the sweet science, but UFC combat is pre-science. The original primitive blood sport, no more complicated than two men inflicting as much damage as possible on each other without much in the way of rules to get in the way. UFC bouts are scored similarly to boxing, but the holy grail is the knockout, which by definition is an injury to the brain, temporary or permanent. The knockout cannot be separated from the effort to injure one's opponent. Watch a half-hour compilation of UFC knockouts, and you're unlikely to retain any illusions about the damage UFC does to its fighters. Still, if two citizens of their own free will want to beat each other up, and other citizens want to pay to watch them, I'm reluctant to say they shouldn't have that right. What it does say about America, if we're showcasing a bloody and dangerous battle between aggressive opponents to help both celebrate the birth of our nation and of Trump. Podcaster Joe Rogan says, "There's no more American thing than having a UFC fight on the White House lawn. It's so American, it's so Trump, it's so crazy." Certainly a UFC fight is so Trump, but is it so America? A YouGov survey indicates that only 17% of Americans approve of the bouts at the White House. The rest disapprove, are unsure, or have no opinion. Further, of the 12 fighters currently scheduled for June 14th, only half were born in the U.S., and only 5 appear to be white. The rest appear to be brown-skinned, and no women. 2 DEI, maybe. Autocrats love to celebrate grand occasions, such as their birthdays, with spectacle and entertainment. Thus, on June 14th, we'll have a president who is fond of violence, presiding over brutal cage fights among mostly brown-skinned men and immigrants. Certainly, this is consistent with Trump's image of America, but is it really who we are not? Is it really who we are? Let's hope not. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following is from Patty Davis, and she's writing for the Los Angeles Times. Reagan would be saddened by conduct of today's White House. This is a reflective time of year for me. My father, Ronald Reagan, died in June 2004, and each year I let myself drift into whatever realm my thoughts and memories lead me to. Sometimes it's about who he was as a father, magical when I was a small child, but elusive and a bit awkward as I grew up. This year, I have found myself reflecting on who he was as America's parent, not in a political framework, but as a human being. I've thought about how baffled he would be at the language and statements that bellow out of the current White House. I can imagine his head bowing in sadness with the current president warned on social media that civilization will die tonight, referring to bombings in Iran. My father would wince at talk of overtaking other nations and claiming them as part of America, that 51st state trope we hear in reference to Canada or Venezuela, or the rumbling of seizing Greenland. I can see him recoiling from the profanities that are tossed out, which he might have used in private but would never allow to cross into his role as leader of the free world. I have thought about his phone call to Margaret Thatcher in 1983 after he ordered an attack on Grenada, or that's Grenada, I guess, a former British colony, without first contacting her. The exchange shows mutual respect, admiration, and adherence to international norms on both their parts. He explained to her the phone call he got at 3 a.m, the urgency of the situation, and the awareness that somewhere in our government there was a loose source, a leak, hence the secrecy of the mission. Thatcher accepted his apology, called him Ron, and all was forgiven. Obviously, a long list of presidents have adhered to civil discourse with other world leaders and have never publicly descended into profanities and threats. As a child, I listened to President John F. Kennedy and felt that I was listening to someone who I was meant to see as a role model. It's hard now to find an elected official who is worthy of being emulated. An influential way of thought within the Trump administration considers empathy to be a sin. And as Conan O'Brien observed in his graduation speech at Harvard last month, we are living through a period of extreme narcissism. These attitudes are contagious. If unkindness, lack of empathy, even cruelty abound at the highest levels, they too easily seep into the rest of our culture. It takes some determination to remember that there is a different way. So now, at the edge of summer, the season when my father left this world, my thoughts go to him. I remember going into the Oval Office the day after he was inaugurated and seeing how quietly reverential he was. Many years later, I saw the sadness in Mikhail Gorbachev's eyes when he came to my father's service in Washington. Brian Mulrooney's eyes brimmed with tears as he eulogized him, and a frail and not well Thatcher made the trip across the Atlantic to honor her friend. These former leaders of the Soviet Union, Canada, and England had shared the world stage with my father, who, like them, had operated with dignity and respect for one another. If we don't remember how world leaders have behaved in the past, if we just accept that dignity and civility are now extinct, we'll find ourselves in a wasteland from which we can't escape. We'll be changed forever, not necessarily by the language tupping out of the White House, but by our normalization of it. Remember that this is not who we are supposed to be, that America's dignity may have been sidelined, but can still be reclaimed, is our lifeline. It's how we pull ourselves back to who we are supposed to be.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. 2 projects seek zoning board approval. A $50 million transformation of the historic Broadway Market and 2-phased expansion of J.M. Smucker's Milk-Bone production plant are poised to move through city approvals as Buffalo's Zoning Board of Appeals considers variances that the projects need for completion. State officials in March announced plans to kick off a renovation of the Broadway Market to turn it into a vibrant year-round food and shopping hub with restored architectural features and a reorganized layout. The revitalization will cluster year-round vendors together along a main central aisle while allowing for new vendors in adjoining areas and providing expanded areas for prepared foods and food production. It'll also feature new vendor stalls. Workers will also restore character-defining elements such as the art modern curved walls and window features of the facade while highlighting internal concrete features. The back portion of the parking garage and 2 parking ramps that have decayed will be demolished and replaced with surface parking, green space, and a loading area that can also host outdoor events. The goal is to create a more sustainable operation for the city-owned public market, which dates to 1888, in hopes of expanding its customer base, strengthening its ties to the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood, and stimulating more development. The project needs 2 zoning variances to allow roof-mounted mechanical equipment and garbage and recycling areas that will not be fully screened. Officials are also seeking a special use permit from the Common Council for outdoor dining, selling alcohol, live entertainment, and an open-air market, as well as Planning Board and Preservation Board approvals. And the Milk-Bone expansion, less than 2 miles away, Big Heart Pet Brands, the Smucker subsidiary that owns the Milk-Bone dog biscuit plant, is working on a previously announced expansion of its product line. The 2-phase project at the 10-acre site would replace a current production system in the plant's Bones building with a new production line to be installed in a nearby bread building. In the 2nd phase, the old production in the Bones building would cease, allowing crews to remove old equipment and install new machinery to boost production of the other product line in that building. Both buildings would also be renovated, while the project at 216 Fogeron Street also includes a new freezer and 4 new silos. Big Heart is seeking 7 variances to permit unscreened rooftop mechanics, a loading berth along the front of the building, a setback of 120 feet, a 1-story addition, and no windows on the ground floor, among others. The project is intended to support the continued operation and growth of the Big Heart Pet Brands facility, which requires a series of carefully considered site and building modifications to meet operational, safety, and production needs, Stellar Product Manager Travis Cochran wrote to the ZBA. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. NutriBlend in Lancaster acquired by British firm. Applied Nutrition has acquired NutriBlend Foods, a sports nutrition company with a manufacturing facility in Lancaster, for $16 million. NutriBlend has about 100 employees in the United States and Canada. Applied Nutrition currently serves the U.S. market with products made in the United Kingdom, but will move that production to the Walden Avenue location. This acquisition is an important step for Applied Nutrition in North America, said Thomas Ryder, Applied Nutrition's CEO. By establishing our own manufacturing and innovation platform in the region, will we be better placed to grow the business, bring new products to market quickly, and improve service for customers. Applied Nutrition, which went public in 2024, sells products in over 85 countries. In its 2025 fiscal year, the company reported revenues equivalent to about $146 million in US dollars and profits of $16 million. Applied Nutrition said the deal will enhance its production capacity, allow it to bring products to market in North America more quickly, and reduce its freight, import duty, and logistics expenses by manufacturing in the United States. Applied Nutrition sells over 120 different products under the names Applied Nutrition, ABE, Body Fuel, and Endurance. The company says its diverse products target elite athletes, gym goers, and health-conscious consumers. NutriBlend has two in-house brands, Basic Supplements and GR8 Lifestyle. Applied Nutrition said the deal will enable the company to introduce its product to NutriBlend's existing former customer base, as well as expand the reach of NutriBlend's in-house brands, as well as its production on behalf of other customers known as white label manufacturing. We are very pleased to be joining the Applied Nutrition Group, whose strong brand and global reach make it an ideal partner for the next phase of our growth, said Jack Schagel, CEO of NutriBlend. Schagel said Applied Nutrition's status as a publicly traded company provides an additional level of transparency, credibility, and trust, which we believe will resonate strongly with customers and partners across North America and afar. NutriBlend, headquartered in Cambridge, Ontario, opened a facility in Cheektowaga in 2009. The company relocated to Lancaster after outgrowing that location.
Thank you, Larry. Americans more worried about their jobs and finances. Americans haven't been this gloomy about their household finances in years, and they expect it'll only get worse. The share of Americans who said their financial situation in May was somewhat worse off or much worse off than a year ago was the largest since January 2023, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's latest monthly survey of U.S. consumers, a closely watched gauge of economic perceptions and expectations. The May survey of consumer expectations also showed that the share of Americans who thought their finances would be somewhat better off or much better off shrank for the fifth month in a row to hit a level not seen since October 2022. The monthly New York Fed surveys don't include details or commentary behind the data. However, the downbeat household finance perceptions come at a time when a U.S.-Israeli war against Iran is driving up costs, particularly for gas and some food, and exasperating affordability concerns while driving overall sentiment to a record low. The May survey also showed that the Americans' year-ahead inflation expectations remain elevated at 3.5%, but had eased from a one-year high of 3.6% hit in April. Sharply rising gas prices have sent inflation considerably higher in recent months. The Consumer Price Index, the most widely used inflation gauge, started the year at 2.4% and has risen to 3.8% as of April, easing wage gains in the process. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trade deficit narrows. U.S. trade deficit narrowed in April as exports jumped to a record high, a trend that, if sustained, puts trade on course to contribute to economic growth this quarter. Also, Chipotle to open on Delaware Avenue. A Chipotle Mexican grill is coming to downtown Buffalo. Chipotle is seeking to open at the Hampton Inn and Suites Buffalo, downtown at 220 Delaware Avenue, replacing the former Salsaritas that had been there since 2005.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Bennett, Fred W. Rocco, Ross. Burns, Patricia. Drusvik, Carl F. Ernst, Judith A. Vigneron. Greenberg, Michael J. Hobbs, Albert. LaCourse, James Harold. Lazuski, Bradley. Nedwiza, Amelia M. Nabe Polomsky. Novak Edward L. Nowak James. Palowski Lucia Lucy Ne Castillo. Petri Leo Paul L.P. Raw Rosemary Ne Walthart. Reese Mark. Rice Jane M. Rust Donald L. Tragesser David S. Vitello Anthony, Chef Tony. Warme Gordon. Wells Elizabeth A. Ne Hartman. White Brian Douglas. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. You are energetic, driven, and inspirational. You have strong views, and don't hesitate to express them. This year, you will reap the benefits of all your hard work, power, and leadership. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. Today is a mixed bag. In one way, things are positive because the moon is in your sign, dancing beautifully with the sun. Encouraging conversations. Tonight, you're strong. Taurus, 3 stars. A tone of pessimism might permeate this day for you. However, if you get involved in heavy mental work, you can definitely do. Tonight, welcome solitude. Gemini, 3 stars. This is a good day to schmooze with friends and intermingle with groups and organizations. However, you might be worried about finances tonight. Friendships. Cancer, 3 stars. Today, Mercury is in your sign at odds with Saturn, which means conversations with authority figures, parents, bosses, teachers, VIPs, and the police will be challenging. Tonight, your notice. Leo, 4 stars. Dark, murky thoughts might be lurking on the peripheries of your mind. Nevertheless, today will make you want to explore new ideas. Tonight, learn something new. Virgo, 3 stars. You make a great impression on others today because you're basking in the spotlight of the sun, which makes you look great. Tonight, check your finances. Libra, 3 stars. Your best choice today is to cooperate and get along when dealing with others, especially partners, spouses, and close friends. Tonight, listen genuinely. Scorpio, 3 stars. Steer clear of controversial subjects today. Those discussions will be difficult and no fun. Someone might criticize you or make you feel depressed. Tonight, work. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Parents should cut some slack when dealing with their kids today because feelings of loneliness and discouragement are rampant. Tonight, be playful. Capricorn, 3 stars. Family discussions are challenging because Mercury is at odds with your stern Saturn. This is not the day to ask for permission or approval. Tonight, relax at home. Aquarius, 4 stars. In one way, this is a playful, fun-loving day. Nevertheless, something might occur at work that depresses you. Tonight, conversations. Pisces, 3 stars. Financial worries can get anyone down. We all want to feel we have a secure future and that we can take care of ourselves. Tonight, check your money. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Try using fine grade steel wool on glass. Dear Heloise, grade number 0000 steel wool won't scratch glass. It's also the best thing for cleaning up chrome that is rusty and pitted. It can make things look almost like new. In parentheses, I collect British sports cars from the 50s and 60s. You learn all kinds of tricks. I'm a 70-year-old man who read your mother's column many decades ago. I'm happy that my local paper recently picked up your column. From Chris T. Chris, for double-paned windows, the stains and spots are possibly on the inside between the sheets of glass. If this is the case, then you'll have to replace the sheet of glass or possibly the entire window. That's from Heloise. Leave dishes sparkling. Dear Heloise, I like to conserve water when washing dishes, so I have many sized rubber scrapers. My granddaughter started the collection. After using them, I take already used paper towels and napkins and wipe them off. I have a plastic container behind my coffee pot that holds the gently used paper goods. My scrapers come in handy to get at the corners of dishes. I hate to waste food. My dishwasher gets everything sparkly clean and would even work on peanut butter, but only after removing what I could first. This only takes seconds. From Doris. P.S. In the process of clearing out paper stuff, I came across an old column of your mother's. I wish I had saved it, as I can't even remember the topic. Doris, thank you for being a lifetime member of both my mother and my column. Over the years, we've received many interesting letters from readers, and we appreciate each and every single person who wrote to us. That was from Heloise. Medical complaints. Dear Heloise, in response to the reader who wrote in about medical complaints, I've submitted several complaints regarding doctors or medical facilities. First, contact your medical insurance carrier because you pay for this insurance. Their job is also to police the doctors who participate in their plans. By law, they have to investigate every complaint that comes from their subscribers. After the investigation, you're contacted regarding the outcome. Fortunately, the one I submitted resulted in an entire overhaul of procedures that weren't being followed. All complaints are kept on file. If a doctor or medical facility has many complaints, they can be dropped as a provider of the health insurance. At any time, the medical insurance company can request to view a file to see if previous issues have been corrected. As the reader stated, you can also contact other medical agencies. I read your column in the Buffalo News, and that's from an informed reader via email. And metal straws. Dear Heloise, regarding straws, I've seen metal straws for sale in various stores that are complete with a brush for cleaning the interior. Some come with an angled bend in them. No plastic pollution or microplastics for metal straw users. And that's from Gail. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From the Digest regarding women's rights. Afghan security officials dispersed a women's rights protest Tuesday in the western province of Herat that started after Taliban morality police detained women accused of violating mandatory dress rules, residents said. Witness said one person was killed, several others were wounded, and dozens of people, including women and girls, were arrested. And House Speaker meets with Trump on FISA. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Tuesday that President Donald Trump is close to appointing a permanent U.S. intelligence chief, signaling a possible effort to address congressional pushback that put renewal of a surveillance law at risk. Johnson's comments were at odds with earlier reporting that Trump indicated in their meeting he was not inclined to name a permanent director of national intelligence to succeed his pick of loyalist Bill Pulte as acting head. The White House did not comment. In a social media post after meeting with Johnson, Trump said Pulte would take over as acting director on June 19th. Trump last week named Pulte to replace Tulsi Gabbard, who resigned effective June 30th.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for June 10th on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beeman
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
On to local and regional news. Two short items here. The first one, feds reveal no details on task force shooting. 3 federal law enforcement agencies said nothing Tuesday about Monday's raid on Glenwood Avenue, in which they said a suspect was shot after he fired at police. The silence followed the third incident in less than 3 weeks in which police shot a person in Buffalo who was accused of attacking them. The latest incident happened when a U.S. Marshal Service Violent Fugitive Task Force went to 861 Glenwood to arrest a person wanted on a federal warrant. U.S. Marshal Charles Salina told reporters at the scene Monday. The person sought on the warrant, whose name authorities have withheld, was shot and taken to Erie County Medical Center. A spokesperson for the U.S. Marshal Service told the Buffalo News late Tuesday morning no updated information was available. The spokesperson asked the reporter if he had contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office. A reporter emailed questions to a spokeswoman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Buffalo. No response was provided. A spokeswoman for the FBI, which is investigating the incident, said she would not have information to share and did not know when an update would be forthcoming. Monday's incident at a house at 861 Glenwood, which sits northeast of Martin Luther King Park Jr., between Fillmore Avenue and Kern Street, happened sometime around 3:30 p.m. or 4 p.m., Salina told reporters Monday. The suspect began shooting after task force members entered the house, Salina said. Task force members returned fire and no officers were shot. The task force involves several federal, state, and local police agencies and has existed for more than 20 years, Salina said. We go after violent offenders, individuals who are wanted on federal warrants, state warrants, anything that's violent, he said. The FBI is investigating what happened as a case of assault on a federal officer, said Brendan Dunford, acting special agent in charge of FBI's Buffalo field office. Buffalo police and state troopers were assisting in the investigation, Dunford said. A Buffalo police spokesman declined to comment. On May 26, Buffalo police officer Mark Hurst was shot 4 times, plus 2 more rounds that were stopped by his protective vest by a suspect on Sherman Street who was struggling with police responding to reports of a domestic disturbance. On May 23rd, another Buffalo police officer, John Simonian, was stabbed by a suspect as Simonian and his partner tried to apprehend him on Broadway. The suspect in that case, Derek M. Harris, was arraigned on a grand jury indictment this week. And Papi Grande set to open Saturday in Niawanda Park. Called a grande opening, Papi Grande will formally celebrate the opening of a seasonal Mexican-themed restaurant in the city of Tonawanda on Saturday. Papi's restaurant and beach bar had a soft launch last weekend. It will open with regular hours on Thursday, said co-owner Courtney Spano, with the grand opening at 11:30 a.m. Saturday in the city's Niawanda Park and live music at 4 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Halton Pope calls for giving control board more power. Action is unlikely, but the idea alarms some city officials. On the same day, Buffalo Common Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope voted against a city budget proposal that would raise property taxes by almost 20%. She introduced a provocative idea, giving the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority wider authority over the city's finances. Halton Pope acknowledged that the idea likely would go no further, and judging from the action of administration officials and union leaders, she was right. But she said the resolution was meant to provoke the reaction it got. My concern wasn't about just this year's budget alone, Halton Pope said. In fact, by putting it in, it's to have a larger conversation. My concern is whether the city of Buffalo is on a sustainable path over the next 4 years and beyond. Halton Pope was joined by Council President pro tempore Zanetta Everhart, Lovejoy District Council member Brian Bowman, and North District Council member Joseph Golombek in voting against the budget. They had argued since Mayor Sean Ryan announced his intention to raise the property tax levy by 25.8 that the increase was too swift for many of their poorest constituents and would risk putting people out on the street. Ryan has maintained that tax increases would be necessary to bring the city's books into balance after former Mayor Byron Brown kept property taxes flat through much of his more than 18 years in office. Under the amendments approved at the end of May, the tax levy will rise 19% in the fiscal year that begins in July. Brown's time in office began shortly after the creation of a state authority in 2003 law to help the city dig out of fiscal crisis. It has been in an advisory or soft mode since voting to come out of the original control period in 2012. Ryan said he was surprised to see the resolution on the day of the budget amendment votes, and he was concerned about the message it might send to other government partners. A survey of council members found that none of those who responded to the Buffalo News were in favor of entering a control period, and even if they did vote in favor, the votes on the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority Board would not be there. Ryan holds one vote, as does his ally, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz. The authority can enter into a control period only through a majority vote. With only 6 of the 9 board members seated, the measure would fail if just 2 board members voted no. Ryan said the very idea of a hard control board sent the wrong message. If a majority of city council voted to bring in a control board, it would definitely set off alarm bells throughout local and state government, Ryan said. Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority Secretary Fred Floss said that hard control periods are reserved for only the most dire of circumstances. The authority is generally there to offer analysis and support, but elected officials should be making the political decisions for their constituents, he added. While the city has a structural deficit of $103 million, according to the review from the State Comptroller's Office, it is not necessarily as bad a shape as in 2003 when the authority was created. At that time, falling property values meant the city was no longer allowed to raise taxes or borrow money under limits set forth by the state constitution. After years of flat taxes and internal borrowing limits, the city has the ability to increase both the tax levy and the borrowing dramatically without coming close to where those limits sit today. We're here to analyze things and let them know what the implications are from their choices and give them all of the options spelled out in a way that they can understand to be able to make the best choices, Floss said. He said there are issues with the adopted budget, uncertain revenues, and jumps in revenue lines that may not be met. However, the significant increase in revenue through the rise in the tax levy should bring the budget into balance for the first time in years, Floss said. The closer we get to being stable, the less likely we are to get into a control period, Floss said. The idea also got pushback from 2 of the city's largest unions. Buffalo Police Benevolent Association President John Davidson said the police department already is having a difficult time attracting and retaining officers. Davidson is hoping to work on recruitment efforts as part of contract negotiations with the city. Police have been working without a contract for almost a year. Getting a new contract done, which would not happen in a control period, is one of the best ways to create stability, and certainly that would be attractive to new recruits. Buffalo is where you're valued. Buffalo is a city you want to live in. Buffalo is a city you want to raise your family in, David said, is the message that officials need to be sending to potential officers. John Otto, president of the Buffalo Professional Firefighters, recounted the low morale among firefighters during the control period that lasted from 2003 to 2012. Firefighters worked for 9 years without a raise, causing them to also miss out on the additional retirement benefits they would have been paid if they were receiving regular raises. And the number of firefighters dropped severely during that time, causing a hiring blitz that stressed the department's capacity for training and caused overtime to jump once the control period ended. The department is also still catching up on replacing outdated equipment with fire regs well past the recommended length of use and still in service. Another issue that would become worse during a control period. I think it opens up the door for hard control board, which is the worst nightmare for anyone in this room, Otto said of the resolution. Ryan said his administration has worked closely with the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority and the city comptroller throughout his first budget process, and that both offices support increasing the property tax levy in order to bring the city's books back into balance. This budget contains the city's first significant step to right the financial ship, so it wouldn't make any sense to request that the control board come hard now, Ryan said.
Thank you, Larry. Next article is from Alan Pergament. When will Demler return? Christmas in July is coming. This is what I'm thinking. Inquiring minds want to know, where has WGRZ TV Channel 2 co-anchor Mary Alice Demler been the last few weeks? And when is she coming back to work alongside co-anchor Scott Levin? The station hasn't said anything on air besides the daily reminder Mary Alice is off tonight. According to sources, Demler is dealing with a family matter that requires her attention. She has been off for more than 3 weeks, and sources say there is no set date for her return. Channel 2 General Manager Mark Manders couldn't be reached immediately for comment. Station management typically doesn't address absences unless the person involved allows them to be addressed. Since Demler has been off for so long, it probably is time for the station to ask her if it is okay to explain her absence. It is Christmas in July in East Aurora. The Trouble with Mistletoe, which was filmed in East Aurora, will have its world premiere when it streams exclusively on Great American Pure Flix on July 9th before premiering on Great American Family and GFAM Plus on July 11th. The film, which stars Gillian Murray and Brett Variable, is part of the Great American Christmas in July program event. Murray was featured in Mario Lopez Presents Chasing Christmas. Varvel's credits include County Rescue and Vindication. According to a release, The Trouble with Mistletoe was adapted from Jennifer Snow's novel. She also wrote the screenplay. Here's a summary. Set in a charming town of Brook Hollow, The Trouble with Mistletoe follows the acquisitions executive, Murray, who returns home for Christmas and unexpectedly reconnects with the former fiancé, Varvel, she left behind. As the traditions of her hometown rekindle old memories, she begins to wonder if the life she walked away from may still be the one meant for her. A reader complained this week about a political ad by State Senator Jeremy Zellner, who is facing John Rivera in a hotly contested primary. The reader suggested President Trump sue Zellner for big money for spreading terrible lies and calling him a racist and a bigot in the ad. Without addressing whether the ad is a lie, it is a good time to remind viewers that political ads are protected by the First Amendment and aren't required to be truthful. In other words, the president has no grounds for a lawsuit. Speaking of President Trump, it was interesting that ABC announcers didn't discuss the booing he received in Madison Square Garden Monday night when he attended the San Antonio Spurs victory over the New York Knicks in Game 3 of the NBA Finals. The booing of the president, a native New Yorker, received significant attention on social networks. I suppose ABC felt viewers could hear it, and there was no need to comment on it. And Nick Mendola, who you may remember from his days working at WGR, now works for NBCSports.com and will be covering the 2026 World Cup around the world, including in Toronto. He also runs the men's and women's USL Soccer Club FC Buffalo here. Mendola noted that FC Buffalo has players from all around the world, including World Cup participants England, Canada, Brazil, Australia, and Germany. FC Buffalo has a men's and women's home doubleheader on Saturday. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Well-known Buffalo physician takes helm as AMA president. Dr. Willie Underwood III, a longtime urologic surgeon in Buffalo, was sworn in Tuesday for a one-year term as president of the American Medical Association. Underwood is the 181st president of the AMA, a large and influential physician organization that convenes more than 190 special medical societies and other entities. He is only the second urologist and third black physician to serve as AMA president. During his inaugural address at the AMA annual meeting in Chicago, Underwood spoke about uniting physicians across specialties, strengthening the physician workforce, and ensuring physicians' clinical expertise helped shape the policies of affecting health outcomes across the country, according to a news release from the AMA. We are living through a defining moment in American healthcare, one that demands leadership grounded in both clinical experience and a commitment to equity, Underwood said as president. I will focus on bringing physicians together to close the gaps in access, outcomes, and opportunity so that every patient in every community receives the care they deserve. We must build a system that works not only for some of us, but for the some of us. In a statement, the AMA said Underwood is committed to advancing patient-centered care and addressing long-standing health inequities through better access, prevention, and care coordination. Progress in healthcare is never the work of one individual. It is the product of collaboration, trust, and a shared commitment to our patients, Underwood said. At the same time, we must recognize that advocating for patients also means advocating for the physicians who care for them, ensuring they have the support, resources, and environment needed to meet the growing demands of the moment. Underwood has more than 25 years of urologic surgery experience, including 15 years specializing in robotic urologic oncology procedures. Underwood came to Buffalo in 2008 for a job at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. Underwood, in 2015, filed a lawsuit against Roswell Park claiming racial discrimination. Roswell Park paid $4 million to settle the case in an agreement reached in 2018, records show. It provided a copy of his remarks to the AMA meeting. Underwood thanked his attorneys from Wigdor Law for their relentless advocacy for what is right and what is just. In addition, Underwood thanked several other physicians whom he referred to as the Village. Those physicians include Dr. Kunle Odunsi, director of the University of Chicago Medicine Comprehensive Cancer Center and the former deputy director of Roswell Park, as well as Dr. Wesley Hicks, chair of the Head and Neck Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery Program at Roswell Park. Underwood was elected to the AMA Board of Trustees in June 2019 and served as AMA Board Chair from 2023 to 2024. He also previously served as president of the Erie County Medical Society. He is also the co-founder of the KAPS Biotechnology LLC and holds patents for co-developing a biomarker for prostate cancer. He has co-authored more than 120 peer-reviewed publications, book chapters, and published abstracts. Buffalo has a rich history of representation in the AMA leadership ranks. In 2020, the Western New York had two doctors on the AMA's 21-member board, Underwood and Dr. Thomas Majewski, a primary care doctor who practices in Orleans County. In 2008, Dr. Nancy H. Nielsen served as AMA president, leading the organization when the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, dominated the national health care conversation. Since 2010, Nielsen has been the Senior Associate Dean for Health Policy at the University of Buffalo's Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:17. On to sports. Buffalo Bills. Bills already banged up as minicamp gets going. Two projected starters on the Buffalo Bills defense were unable to participate at the start of mandatory minicamp in Orchard Park. Safety Cole Bishop and inside linebacker Doran Williams watched from the sideline Tuesday at One Bills Drive as the team went through its first of three mandatory minicamp practices. Once training camp begins, the Bills will have 5 weeks to prepare for their season-opening game in Houston. It's still too soon to be concerned about a player's injury. There are non-padded practices, and experienced players understand how to absorb information while watching. It'll be concerning, though. However, if Bishop in particular is not ready to join the Bills on the practice field at St. John Fisher University in Pittsford, Bishop had a breakthrough season last year with 85 total tackles, including 4 for loss and 3 interceptions. He became one of their most important players on defense. Above all, he was healthy. Bishop did not miss a game. The Bills need the same to happen this season. Bishop needs to be on the field as much as possible during training camp. The scheme and playbook changed. He needs to get used to his new safety partner, which will likely be C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Safeties can develop chemistry off the field, but it's impossible for them to put a plan into action if they're not available to practice. With Bishop still out Tuesday, veteran safety Geno Stone lined up with the starters on defense. You look at our safety room, and there's so much depth in there in the competition. Brady said we brought in a lot of veterans from that perspective, with Gino and Chauncey and DeMar Hamlin, bringing him back, and you have Sam Franklin. It's really good for Cole because he's always been a young guy, and now he's the one who's been here in the starting role. It's really good to see them coming together. Cole has been in and out this offseason, and he's kind of rolling with it. He's in a really good headspace. We want everyone to be out there, but I want everyone to be out there for training camp too. The Bills have big plans for Williams. He's slated to start at the inside linebacker next to Terrell Bernard whenever they are at their 3-4 base defense. Brady declined to reveal how and when Williams suffered his injury. His focus this spring, Brady said, is mental reps. The plan is for Williams to be ready on the first day of training camp. Williams' absence, the 4-year linebacker, was on crutches Tuesday, meant more opportunity for rookie 4th-round draft pick Caleb Elams-Orr, who has ascended this spring. Elams-Orr will need to show the coaching staff during padded practices that he can be in the right spot after the snap. He's made some impressive plays during practice this spring, and to his intensity has stood out to Brady. Dorian's a guy that he's going to have an opportunity to make a huge impact in this defense, defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard said last week. Other attendants, wide receiver Joshua Palmer participated in team drills for the first time since January. An injury to Palmer's left ankle caused the Bills to shut him down for the playoffs. He worked with trainers throughout the offseason and told the News last week he was close to returning to practice. Palmer lined up with first-team offense in 3 receiver sets Tuesday. Skylar Bell, a rookie receiver drafted by the Bills in the 4th round, watched the first mini-camp practice from the sideline because of an undisclosed injury. His absence led to more opportunities for veteran receiver Trent Sherfield Sr., who caught a touchdown on a jump ball during an 11-on-11 drill. Offensive lineman Lloyd Cushenberry and safety Gordon Hancock wore red non-contact jerseys. Outside linebacker Michael Hokek Achilles joined his position group for individual reps for the first time this spring, but he sat out team drills. Right tackle Spencer Brown, undisclosed, and wide receiver Terrell Shavers, ACL, also watched from the sideline. Big addition, James Cook, the NFL's leading rusher last season, practiced with the Bills for the first time this spring. He split first-team snaps with Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, although Cook's workload this year may not match the career-high 309 carries. He's still the bell cow running back for this offense. Cook missed voluntary workouts last year to earn a pay raise and contract extension. He participated in mandatory minicamp and the start of training camp before he began a hold-in that eventually led to a new deal. Cook went on to lead the NFL in rushing yards and elected to stay in Miami until this week. Look, you guys saw what James wasn't here last offseason, and I always wanted our guys here, Brady said. I've been in touch with Jimbo the whole time. You guys remember how he was when he showed up last offseason. He works. We were in touch with everyone in Miami where he spends his offseason. I'm always going to want guys here, but it's voluntary. It's part of it. Jimbo has a great work ethic and a great approach. And competition, Alec Anderson and Austin Corbett have rotated at left guard with the Bills' first team offense this season. The competition will drag into training camp because it's impossible to evaluate linemen during non-padded practices. Anderson played 189 snaps on offense for Buffalo in 2025, including 2 starts, while Corbett is coming off a season in which he started 11 games for the Carolina Panthers. I don't want to ever say this time of year isn't important, Brady added. I know they might be in quote-unquote pajamas right now, but it's no different than a receiver and a DB. Pads come on and players play differently. It's important to see the technique and the communication, them working it, them understanding there's a point to the off-season. They're only allowed to be so physical. It's hard to make some of the judgments, whereas a receiver, you see the ball thrown and they make the play. I like the competition that we have here. Movement, you're going to hear you're going to hear anecdotes during training camp about DJ Moore making plays from the slot and out wide. The Bills are moving this veteran receiver around the formation to try to create matchup problems, which should free up Khalil Shakir to make more plays. Shakir was a standout at practice Tuesday. The coaching staff is also thrilled with Keon Coleman's work on and off the field this offseason. Brady was quick to remind reporters that Coleman needs to continue this momentum through training camp, but the Bills were encouraged by Coleman's performance in all areas. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to hockey. Pointed questions. Among them are draft doings and Tuck's future with the Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres face an offseason that could be eventful, if anything. KeyBank Center will host the NHL Draft with the first round on June 26th and the second through 7th rounds on June 27th. The Sabres are expected to host their annual development camp the week immediately after the draft, and free agency opens July 1st, which could bring some significant changes to the Sabres after they earn their first berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs since 2011. Here are 5 questions the Sabres face as they enter one of the most active parts of the offseason, and 5 answers to those questions. Question: keep or trade the first round pick? The Sabres are slated to select at number 27, and it's the lowest in the first round that they have drafted since 2010, when they selected defenseman Mark Pysyk at number 23. The Sabres have stockpiled first-round picks, an unusual benefit of missing the playoffs from 2011 to 25, and it may behoove the Sabres to forego a first-round pick in favor of acquiring a player who can go right into the lineup. The Sabres have numbers at center, but don't have an experience at center, particularly given that Tage Thompson was playing out of position there. The Sabres also need more depth at wing, particularly if Alex Tuch decides to sign with another team as he becomes an unrestricted free agent July 1st. The Sabres should trade the first-round pick as part of a package that would acquire an experienced player. That's our answer here. Or players who can step right into the lineup. Question: keep Tuch or let him walk? That leads to the next question. How did the Sabres persuade Tuch to return? Or who do they cut bait and use that cap space to renegotiate contracts or sign depth pieces in an otherwise meager free agent class? Tuch, in a way, was a bargain under his current contract, which expires June 30th. $4.75 million annually for 7 seasons, including the last 5 with the Sabres. Tuch signed the contract in October 2018 when he played for the Vegas Golden Knights. Tuch scored 33 goals, had 33 assists, and was plus 24, blocked 90 shots, had 82 hits in 79 games this season. In 615 career games, Tuch has 200 goals, 248 assists, 525 blocked shots, and 619 hits. Adrian Kempe's contract with the Los Angeles Kings is a measuring stick for what Tuch should be due once he agrees to a new contract with the team. Kempe, a wing, signed with an 8-year extension with the Kings in November worth $10.625 million annually. AFP Analytics projects Tuch's next contract to be a 7-year deal with an annual cap hit of $10.1 million. Tuch walked through the course of contract negotiations after the Sabres' playoff run ended in mid-May. Initial talks began in the summer of 2025 with former Sabres general manager Kevin Adams and continued after Jarmo Kekalainen stepped into that role in December. Tuch said contract talks were on hold once the Sabres began their push for the playoffs and that they would continue after the season ended. Answer: Tuch's current contract expires in 3 weeks with no obvious movement. Tuch is easily the top free agent in this year's pool. He should bet on himself and sign with a new team that meets his terms. Question: speaking of trades, do the Sabres pull one off? And what would that trade involve? Draft picks, players on the roster, minor league assets, and the future draft picks? The Sabres need an experienced top-line center. Thompson played at center in 63 of the 81 regular season games. He was in the lineup in 2025-26 after Yuri Kulich was ruled out for the season in November due to blood clots. Josh Norris primarily centered the third line but missed games due to illness and injuries, ribs, upper body. Sam Carrick, acquired from the New York Rangers at the March trade deadline for the Sabres' third and sixth round picks in this year's NHL draft, immediately gave the Sabres a fourth-line face-off specialist, but he missed the final 7 regular season games and 12 playoff games due to a left arm injury he sustained March 31st. The Sabres also need another face-off specialist. If Thompson returns to the wing next season, Thompson was 45.5 on face-offs. Ryan McLeod, 47.7, and Norris, 49.5, and the Sabres finished at 45.9 on face-offs, which was last in the NHL. Answer. See above. Put a trade package together that addresses experience and skill at center and move Thompson back to the wing. Question. What are the Sabres' priorities as far as signing players and renegotiating contracts? The Sabres' unrestricted free agents are Alex Tuch, right wing; Beck Malenstein, right wing; Josh Dunn, center; Tanner Pearson, left wing; Luke Schenn, defenseman; Logan Stanley, defenseman. The Sabres' restricted free agents are Zach Benson, left wing; Peyton Krebs, forward; Michael Kesselring, defenseman. The Sabres entered the offseason with just under $12 million in projected cap space, according to Puckpedia.com. The salary cap will rise from $95.5 million to $104 million for 26-27, but staying under the cap while maintaining roster integrity becomes a new task. Benson must be a priority, particularly how Kekalainen praised the left wing after his stellar playoff performance, and particularly if Tuch leaves for another team with a bigger contract. AFP Analytics has 2 projections for Benson's next contract, a 2-year deal at $4.196 million and a 7-year deal at $6.6975 million. Malenstein should also be a priority for the Sabres, but could also be highly coveted free agent for his physicality. He finished 5th in the NHL with 282 hits and has 714 of his 787 career hits in the last 3 seasons. He's at the end of a 2-year deal at $1.35 million a year. AFP Analytics projects Malenstein's next contract to be a 3-year deal at $2.637. The other wild card when it comes to doling out and renegotiating contracts, defenseman Byron Brown is also expected to enter contract negotiations, as he will become an unrestricted free agent next summer and is eligible for an extension this summer. He signed a 2-year contract worth $6.25 million a year in July 2025. Answer. The Sabres can't keep the entire band together. It's time to pick and choose which players are long-term priorities, so expect the Sabres to make some decisions on their roster. But also keep in mind that after this year's turnaround, Vulture should now be seen as a destination for some free agents. Question. Will there be more front office or organizational changes? Kekalainen is now nearly 6 months into his term as Sabres general manager and made his first organizational change in his first week on the job in December by hiring John Flynn as assistant general manager and Mark Bergevin as associate general manager. Kekalainen said in December that everything would be evaluated organizationally, both on a short-term and on a long-term basis. Expect evaluation and change to continue this offseason. The Sabres' American Hockey League affiliate in Rochester still needs a general manager after the Sabres parted ways with Jason Karamanos in December. The Sabres also need a new ECHL farm team after the Minnesota Wild in May announced that Jacksonville Icemen is their new affiliate. 29 of the NHL's 32 teams currently have an ECHL affiliate, except for the Sabres, Columbus, and Utah. The Worcester Railers are expected to announce their new NHL affiliation June 20th. Answer: expect more turkey ring, particularly after the draft.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:33. Here's a short sport. ESPN reports Trump will skip Game 4 at Madison Square Garden. President Trump reportedly plans to skip Game 4 of the NBA Finals at Madison Square Garden after getting roundly booed by Knicks fans before Monday night's deflating 115-111 loss in Game 3. The president has scheduling conflicts and obligations that will prevent him from attending the game on Wednesday, as the Knicks seek to extend their 2-1 lead in the best-of-7 game series against the San Antonio Spurs, ESPN reported on Tuesday. Trump brushed off the Boo Birds, who serenaded him with Bronx cheers when he was shown on video screens during the singing of the national anthem, as he became the first sitting president to attend an NBA Finals game. "It was, I think, mostly cheers," he told reporters after the game before boarding Air Force One to return to Washington. "It was loud and it was very enthusiastic." Trump also appeared to doze off at times as he sat in a luxury skybox along Knicks owner James Dolan and several cabinet officials and political allies. The announcement that Trump won't be making a return appearance on Wednesday was greeted by sighs of relief from Knicks fans who had to wait in hours-long security checkpoint lines to get inside the arena. A planned watch party outside MSG was also scrapped over security concerns related to Trump's attendance. It is not yet known if the Fan Fest will be back for Game 4, although officials were hopeful they can give the green light. Some critics of Trump blamed his appearance for undermining the unity of fans at the Garden and contributing to the loss. "Trump curse," tweeted a dejected Representative Dan Goldman, Democrat in New York, as he trudged out after the loss. Even before the game, ESPN personality Stephen A. Smith had predicted Trump would disrupt the energy at the Garden. He said the loss vindicated his claim. "The president disrupted our mojo," Smith said Tuesday on his show. "I've said this on many occasions over the last 24 hours, and I'm saying it again. The man messed things up." Trump countered by lashing out at Smith as low IQ. Larry?
Well, one quick short from the WNBA. Clark drains late three and lifts Fever by Mystics. Caitlin Clark scored 19 points and made a game-winning three-pointer with 2.5 seconds left as the visiting Indiana Fever defeated the Washington Mystics 78-76 on Monday night. And also, the Liberty's run continues. Breanna Stewart scored 28 points as the New York Liberty extended their winning streak to 5 games with an 89-80 victory over the Connecticut Sun on Monday night in Uncasville, Connecticut.
Thank you, Larry. Asking Eric, mother struggles to tell daughters about medical diagnosis. "Dear Eric, I've been undergoing tests to confirm a diagnosis of multiple myeloma, and all the signs are pointing in that direction. While I navigate the medical system, test results, and diagnosis, I am faced with the challenge of telling people about all of this. I have 3 grown daughters who are relatively settled in life. I would like to tell them in a way that would be easiest for them to hear. My train of thought is to wait for a definitive diagnosis, a prognosis, and a plan of treatment. That way they will know what it is, what to look like, and for how long. I am currently employed remotely and have medical coverage through my employment. Arranging doctor's visits and lab visits is becoming more difficult as they are increasingly significantly. I hesitate to inform my employer because I fear that I'll lose my job and my medical benefits. I can envision a more flexible schedule that has been done for other employees. With all this, I'm having trouble pretending like everything is okay. Do you have any advice on the way to present this information to my children so it lands as softly as possible, and to my employer so I can still do my work with a more flexible schedule? From Sick and Worried Mom. Dear Mom, I'm so sorry about the stress you're experiencing and the scary medical news you're encountering. Your concern for your daughter is very kind, but one of the privileges of family is being able to support our loved ones when they're going through challenges. So I encourage you to tell your daughters as soon as possible. There's no time that will make it easier to hear, unfortunately, but if you wait, you carry this burden alone, and they will wish that they could have done more sooner to help you. The softest landing is just the truth. This is what I know now. This is what I've been told to do next. This is what I'm experiencing physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is what I'd like from you, even if it's just checking in more. I know it may be hard to hear, but if you don't have to manage this for your daughters. Our health can sometimes be more than one person can possibly manage. That's why we seek out doctors, nurses, and other experts. So trust that your daughters understand that this is beyond your control and theirs, and that they want to walk with you through the unknown. Similarly, you don't have to manage this for your employer. There are federal protections that prevent you from being fired because of medical leave. If you have HR, ask to have a confidential conversation about your options. If you don't have HR, you may want to consult with an employment attorney to determine the safest way for you to get the considerations you need. Dear Eric, your advice to Messy House regarding the disconnect between chores and cleanliness was spot on. The letter writer was frustrated that her 79-year-old husband does a poor job of cleaning and maintaining the house. Messy has to decide if her frustration is worth the misery and constant battles she's picking. My husband and I are retired and faced a similar mismatch in cleanliness expectations. I realized earlier on that my cleanliness standard is a lot higher than most people, so I clean more often. It also helps that we now have the luxury of separate bathrooms. He can run whatever disgusting science experiment he wants in his bathroom, and I keep mine and the one the guests use clean to my higher standards. Also, I've learned to let go and let him do other chores around the house as he chooses without micromanaging him, and I thank him for his efforts. I also have tried to model that if you don't make a mess in the first place, there's less cleaning to do. We're both a lot happier and more relaxed and able to communicate calmly. If Messy can't get over it, hire a cleaning service from Clean Freak. Dear Clean Freak, I am glad you and your husband have found a solution that works for both of you. And with so many aspects of marriage, I dare say every aspect, clear communication is key. Every couple in every home is going to be different, and so it's important that neither person assumes the other is in charge of cleaning or managing the home. Making a life together is a shared project, and that project can change as the years go on. I hope that the letter writer and any other couple that is getting hamstrung by different expectations around chores is able to talk it through with respect and fair-mindedness. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump's war with Iran may push more people to electric vehicles. Eric Perkins is towing his shiny silver Airstream camper on what will ultimately be a nearly 6,000-mile road trip around the United States without ever burning a drop of gas or diesel. His secret? A battery-powered Rivian R1 pickup, which allows him to haul his 23-foot camper without worrying about the price of fuel. He's gone from San Diego across to Branson, Missouri, and is now headed home to California from Moab, Utah. While the national average price of regular gas sitting at around $4.16 a gallon and diesel around $5.31, Perkins, 49, is more than a little pleased about his EV, even if many of his fellow campers consider driving a battery-powered pickup a political choice. Perkins' recharging tab so far is less than $750 for the journey, dramatically cheaper than if he'd been driving a traditional pickup. President Trump has moved to eliminate incentives for buying EVs, while encouraging manufacturers to keep building gas and diesel vehicles. But Trump, according to industry experts, might inadvertently push more Americans into EVs because of the war he started with Iran and the resulting spike in gas prices. I just get so much negativity from people who think that Americans burning diesel is more American, said Perkins, a legal consultant and a self-described libertarian. And I think Trump is going to become the most pro-EV president in history. Upon taking office in his second term, Trump and his team began rolling back federal regulations and eliminating tax incentives that had spurred tens of thousands of drivers to buy EVs from startups like Tesla and Rivian, but also more traditional manufacturers like Nissan, Toyota, and GMC. Trump said he believed that Americans, not government regulations, should choose what kind of vehicles they drive. In addition to eliminating subsidies, the White House softened Biden and Obama-era regulations designed to push traditional automakers into offering more EVs by toughening tailpipe emission standards. While EVs require electricity to run, they generate overall fewer carbon emissions, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. Polls show that EV ownership has typically broken along partisan lines, but that conservatives became more willing to consider buying an EV after Tesla CEO Elon Musk aligned with Trump and backed his presidential campaign. After retaking the presidency, Trump in 2025 showed off a red Tesla sedan at the White House and encouraged other Americans to buy ones like it. Trump's Tesla purchase came after a series of setbacks on Tesla dealerships and vehicles, particularly Cybertrucks, by Americans angry over Musk's support of the precedent. Last March, Elaine Buchberg, the former chief economist of General Motors, predicted that most aggressive anti-EV steps taken by the Trump administration could drop sales from 48% of the market to 32% by 2030. Now she expects high gas prices, along with a market being flooded by affordable off-lease Teslas, will make some car buyers recalculate. Of the 287 million vehicles registered in the United States, about 3.5 million are EVs, federal statistics show. Like Perkins, Buckberg said she believes Trump's Iran war may prompt more people to pick EVs over traditional cars, especially if gas prices remain high for more than 3 months. Gas prices under Trump have not hit the same level as they did under Biden in June 2022, when the national average briefly broke $5 before dropping back. At the same time, however, Biden administration was also trying to encourage Americans to switch to EVs. Used EVs are getting price comparable, and so you say, wow, I can get this and have a great lower fuel bill. Great, said Buckberg, a visiting scholar at Harvard's Salata Institute for Climate and Sustainability. The shift is definitely happening, and the high gas prices just accelerated. Previously, EVs were primarily being sold in California and 17 other states that had adopted extra tough emission standards, Buckberg said. That meant those states, which also include New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Colorado, are where drivers would find the most charging stations and the most EV options. But as used Teslas flood the market, buyers in other states are discovering that $20,000 gets them effectively a luxury car that also comes with dramatically lower operating costs, she said. Used EVs go all over the country and hit a much wider set of households based on income, she said. You're getting a whole different set of people who are experiencing EVs. I think that a lot more people will understand that if they aren't little pokey vehicles with a tiny range. White House officials say Trump's rollbacks of Biden's regulations and incentives protect consumer choice by letting EVs compete on a level playing field with traditional gas or diesel vehicles. In a statement, White House spokesman Taylor Rogers said the president wants to unleash Americans' energy dominance, which would ultimately drive down energy costs for everyone, regardless of what car they drive. While President Trump is supportive of consumer choice and has rolled back the left's unpopular and costly EV mandates, the reality is that fossil fuels are still necessary to generate the electricity that powers electric car vehicles, Rogers said. In Wyoming, Casper resident and trucker Levi Dutton said he and his wife are considering buying an EV to shuttle their daughter to summer softball camps in Denver. Returning from a Memorial Day camping trip, Dutton watched as 21 gallons of diesel flowed into the tank of his Ram 2500 at $5.40 a gallon. He admitted he'd considered telling his extended family that fuel prices were too high to justify driving 350 miles to central Colorado for their annual camping trip. A truck like his typically gets 9 to 11 miles per gallon when towing, and about 16 miles per gallon unloaded, according to Fuelly.com. It was tempting to say we weren't going to make it this year because of the prices, Dutton said, but I didn't want to disappoint my family over some money. Dutton said he doesn't think an EV truck would be powerful enough to safely haul his family's 26-foot Jayco camper, but he figured an EV for his wife would be a smart move given the current fuel prices. It's a move they wouldn't have considered before prices shot up, even though Wyoming residents pay some of the lowest electricity costs nationally, according to Texas-based electricity information company ElectricChoice.com. Households typically save $800 to $1,000 on fuel costs by switching to EVs, according to the EPA. 300 miles of charge is enough to get us to Denver, and we're going to have to do that drive at least 6 to 10 times this summer, Dutton said. Drivers like Dutton are the kinds of customers Colorado-based Lightship RV is targeting. Founded in part by former Tesla engineers and battery experts, the company makes self-powering electric campers designed to be towed behind either a traditional truck or EV, significantly extending their range. Fitted with solar panels on their roofs, Lightship RVs have big battery packs and electric motors in the wheels, which kick in to assist whatever kinds of vehicles they're being towed. The Lightship batteries can also recharge EVs mid-trip. Company co-founder Ben Parker said camper owners are worrying about high fuel prices, although they are often driving 80,000 pickups towing 100,000 campers like Perkins Airstream. They care about getting their dollars worth per mile, Parker said. People are sick of getting 8 to 10 miles to the gallon when they're paying $5 a gallon. The median distance people drive with their campers is just 125 miles from home, according to the RV Industry Association. While most EV pickups can drive hundreds of miles on a single charge, their range drops dramatically while towing. Perkins can get about 180 miles while towing his Airstream, about half his normal range. Along with using official Rivian or Tesla chargers, he can also sometimes plug into an outlets at campgrounds that regular campers use to run their AC and televisions. Because this is the longest trip he's ever taken using an EV to tow a camper, Perkins says has scrupulously kept track of how much energy he's used, how much climbing or descending he has done, and the impacts of or headwinds on tailgates. Perkins said many traditional pickup drivers are curious about his success towing with an EV, and some of them making snide comments about how he can drive only 20 miles before recharging. While his range is less than that of a full-size diesel truck, Perkins said the benefits of his Rivian outweigh the more frequent charging stops. A lot of people are kind of shocked how much power and torque electric vehicles have, said Perkins, who conceded to showing off a little bit on big hills. I'll go ahead and let it run up to 70 to 75, while everyone else with a camper, they're all crawling along at 45.
Thank you, Larry. No evidence of cheating in California vote. This is an article about PolitiFact. Shortly before abruptly ending his Meet the Press interview on Sunday, President Trump wrongly pointed to California's ballot counting pace as evidence of a rigged election. When Trump said the state was still counting ballots days after the June 2nd election, host Kristen Welker said, well, that's how they count the votes in California. Trump said, do you know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election. Welker asked Trump for his evidence that the election was rigged. All I have to do is look, Trump said, adding, and I listen to people, and let's see what happens. And more back and forth, Trump called Welker's show and network crooked, saying, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Shortly after, he walked out of the interview, bringing it to an abrupt end. The California primary featured multiple races, including for governor and Los Angeles mayor. California typically takes longer than other states to count ballots, which is largely a function of the state's law and reliance on voting by mail. Trump's interview was recorded June 5th, 3 days after the election. As of mid-afternoon, California time June 8th, about 72% of the votes were counted in the governor's race, showing Democrat Xavier Becerra in the lead, followed by Republican Steve Hilton. We asked the White House for information showing that the California election is rigged and how that relates to ballot counting. A spokesperson referred us back to the president's comments. For years, Trump has repeatedly spread falsehoods about rigged elections, including in California. Trump's not alone in his criticism of the pace of California counting ballots. However, he distorted what it means. It's not a sign of widespread cheating. In California, a state with about 23 million registered voters, election officials mail ballots to all active voters. In 2024, about 19% voted in person. It takes time to process mail ballots, including election workers verifying identity by matching signatures on the envelopes with registration records. The state legislature in 2025 shortened the time frame for counting ballots, requiring counties to count most ballots by June 15th, nearly 2 weeks after the primary. County election officials have 30 days to process some ballots, including provisional ballots. Many voters turn in their ballots on Election Day, experts say. The state counts ballots postmarked by Election Day that are received by counties within 7 days after the election. County elections officials must report their final results to the Secretary of State by July 3rd, and the state will certify results by July 10th. Kim Alexander, president of the nonpartisan California Voter Foundation, pointed to other factors that affect ballot processing time in the state's 58 counties, including the election staff's capacity, equipment, and space. Even if counties had the money to add more equipment and space, many don't have the space. More equipment and staff, many don't have the space, Alexander said. The foundation, along with Protect Democracy United, which works to build public confidence in elections, proposed that the state spend $91 million on additional county funding for equipment, space, and staff, as well as for voter outreach and education promoting early ballot return. Alexander said the pace of the count is not proof the election was rigged, but there's plenty of evidence that long vote counts undermine voter confidence, and California should better explain that it is prioritizing access, security, and accuracy, Alexander said. California also requires a mandatory 1% manual tally for all jurisdictions, which also slows the process but is a security measure in addition to post-election audits, said Lisa Bryant, a Fresno State professor and expert on election administration. And their ruling, Trump said the ongoing ballot counting in California means they're cheating on the election. The pace of counting ballots in the June 2nd primary is in accordance with the state's election laws. Those policies apply to all voters regardless of party. Most Californians vote by mail, with about 19% voting in person in 2024. County election officials count most ballots in 13 days, but have 30 days for some ballots. It takes time to process mail ballots, including election workers verifying identity by matching signatures on the envelopes with registration records. We rate this statement pants on fire. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Credit cards. U.S. District Judge Brian Cogan in Brooklyn, New York, granted preliminary approval Tuesday to Visa's and MasterCard's revised $38 billion settlement with merchants who accuse the card networks of charging too much to process payments on their credit cards. Cogan ruled nearly 2 years after a different judge rejected a proposed $30 billion settlement as too small. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, June 10th, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beanon. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's registered tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.